Okay, so this is the fourth lecture on the topic of young adulthood or early adulthood. And we left off at the end of the last one. We talked about higher education. And in this lecture, I want to talk specifically about some of the theories about personality development. We haven't talked a lot about what we mean by personality, but in this case, personality is defined as patterns of a behavior, thoughts, emotions, and behaviors that are consistent across time, place, and yeah, they're consistent across. So your textbook offers a couple different theories about how our attitudes and beliefs and behaviors become, I'm going to use the word habituated, how they become fairly consistent during this part of our life. And what's similar about all of them is they all rely on this idea that there are certain things that happen during this stage in your life or are typical. Remember the word normative, normal, that are normally occur during people's lives in our culture. And our accordance or the degree to which our lives transpire in this normative pattern predict how the patterns of behaviors predict our own personality development. So one theory refers to the normative stage theory, which says that your personality development is influenced by if you're doing things in the normative developmental stage, right? And one thing that is expected to, or our culture is normal to occur during this stage of your life course is we start to pair bond. We find partners, long-term partners. We get engaged, we get married during our young adulthood. And that was what Erickson, and this is likely to be a quiz question, that's what Erickson referred to as the crisis, right? The crisis in young adulthood is intimacy versus isolation. Intimacy, are we going to turn towards someone? Are we going to create a life structure where we share ourselves, our emotional selves, our dreams, whatever, with somebody? That's intimacy, not just physical intimacy, but personal self-disclosure? Or are we going to not? That would be isolation. So Erickson, and again, let me emphasize this again, Erickson said the crisis of this stage in life is intimacy versus isolation. And the other two theories are really pretty much the same or similar. Life structures model says what happens during this stage of life is we devote our time to, same thing when we were talking about adolescence. Remember, when adolescence, we have that dilemma between our parents and our peers, and we turn our attention away from our parents towards our peers. Well, life structures model says that continues to happen in this early stage of life. Do you turn your attention towards your job? Do you turn your attention towards family? And yeah, that's pretty much, so this is what it's called, the structures of your life, right? In other words, what are the things that are demanding your attention and your time? And maybe it's school, maybe it's work. And then similar to that is this timing events model that says this is about normative events. So if your culture and what you do at 20 years old is you go to college and you live in the dorms and you live in you live in your party house, but you maybe have a child at 19, 20, you do something different. This will affect your personality development different than somebody else's personality development. So again, it goes back to that really important idea that we've talked about all along, and that is the normative. What do others in your culture do during this time, and how we think about ourselves, how we think about the world, how we think about other people are all influenced by if our events, if our life is unfolding in the same sequence as everybody else. Okay.
It's 11 o'clock.
The next slide talks about happiness and psychological needs, very similar. The social clock, right? The social clock simply means that when we're more, I don't want to say we're more happy, but happiness, we're more likely to identify ourselves as happy if we, again, are the events in our life, right? The clock are in sync with what everybody else is doing. If all of our peers are getting engaged and having weddings and we are not, we may suffer emotionally. We may not feel as satisfied with our life. If all of our peers are having children and we're not having children and we want to have children and they're all having baby showers, we may not find as much satisfaction and happiness in our life. That's simply what refers to as social clock. And the point is that a social clock for men is often different than the social clock for women. Um, Moving down to the next slide here, we've got, this is some stuff, I actually don't remember if this is in your textbook or not. I think the stages of relationships is in your textbook. The rules about friendship is not. I found that someplace else. I just thought it was really cool, especially if you find yourself, which I have, found myself saying, you know, these, I don't have very many friends, and I partly because I think they're a lot of work, right? And I'm lazy. I've said that before. But if you read these rules, it's a lot of work to have friends, right? I mean, it says volunteer, you have to be able to help them out, right? It just like, that's a lot of work. Um, but the other one, the other list on here about stages of relationships, I do think this is useful. And maybe it's because I just come from a different generation, but when I listen to young people talk about their relationships and they're talking, they're not dating, but yet maybe they're having sex. It's like, it's very confusing to me as a mother figure to understand what that stage of the relationship. So there are some theorists who've actually outlined the different stages, and so it's kind of interesting to look at. Like the first one, the lowest level or the first stage is you just start to interact in different places. Then you may begin to talk about you may begin to disclose good things in your life and bad things in your life. And then the very last stage, when it says you're officially a couple, is when you both identify yourself as a couple. So I was thinking about this the other day when I was having a conversation with my daughter. She thinks that she's in a relationship, but apparently he doesn't. Okay, moving on to the next topic is the topic on love. And I would really enjoy a whole lecture on the topic of love. I think it's just it's a fun topic. But there's the couple things that are in your textbook that I want to draw your attention to specifically are what's referred to as love styles and the love triangle, right? So love styles is a kind of maybe it's a classic, I don't know, but it's an old ideal that says that we all have our own love styles, and there's 7 different love styles. You have a ludic lover, you have a pragma lover, an agape lover, a manic lover, a stoage, compassionate, and eros. So the ludic lover is the player. The ludic lover is somebody that they like the game, they like the chase of the lover. She is just, it's all a game, right? And you might have multiple lovers and you don't want your lover. I think I have a scale. Maybe I'll put that one up for this lecture, and you can explore what kind of lover you are. Men are more likely to identify as ludic lovers than women. You have the pragma lover, and this is the practical lover, right? This is the lover that would never date somebody they wouldn't potentially marry. This is the practical, they look for, well, that's all I can say, right? I always think about, I think about Twilight, right? So Twilight, you have Edward, well, no, not necessarily, but the werewolf, right? The werewolf. The agape lover, so the agape love is a sacrificial kind of love. Sometimes it's referred to as the love between God and people, God and people. It's just a sacrificial. Sometimes parents might be described as being agape love, like they'll do anything for their loved ones. The manic lover, you probably want to avoid manic lovers. These are the stalkers, right? For the manic lover, love is pain. Love hurts. Love, yeah, they're the ones that they ache with love, right? I don't think that sounds like any fun at all. You know, the stoage lover, I've heard stoage lovers described as sort of like the love between a grandparent and yeah, a grandparent and a grandchild, right? It's that kind of love. Then the compassionate, oh my goodness, can't believe I'm forgetting these. Compassionate love is I believe that's the all encompassing, um, uh-oh. And then the erotic lover, that's your romantic lover, all right? That's all about romance. And so I'll put up a scale and you can see what you are. The triangle theory of love argues that all relationships, and your textbook talks about this one, all relationships are made up of these three components, these three aspects. One aspect of this theory is commitment. And I always like to think of commitment as if the world fell apart, if the world fell apart, who would you want to be with, right? Who, if the zombie apocalypse came, who's the one person you want at your side? Who are you most committed to? And this isn't like you're committed in terms of engagement, but this is the person that you feel maybe the most, I don't want to say maybe responsible for, but if you have one person, right, who is that one person? The other one is passion, and passion is just like it sounds. Passion is um, lust, romance, desire, passion. And the third one is intimacy. And intimacy in this case is obviously not sexual intimacy, but intimacy is self-disclosure. I tell you my secrets, you tell me your secrets. And the idea is that all relationships have these three elements, but they have them in a different combination. So you might be in a 45-year marriage, never talk to your partner hardly anymore. You sit in separate rooms in the evening, you don't have sex anymore, but you remain married. That's what's often referred to as empty love, right? It has commitment, but it doesn't have intimacy and it doesn't have compassion. Or you might have I don't know, maybe a best friend that you only see every 3 years or only talk to, and you just talk and talk and talk and talk, right? That one you have lots of intimacy, but not necessarily any commitment or necessarily any passion. That would be just intimacy. Or you might have I don't know, a lover that you don't talk to and you have no commitment to. I don't think I don't know, you just have somebody that a booty call, right? That would be passion, but it doesn't have those other two aspects. So I don't find that theory very useful. The model of love that I find most useful, and no doubt some of you are familiar with this. I certainly, it's kind of pop culture these days, and that's the love languages. And the love language idea says that I communicate love in a certain way. My partner has a language that they communicate love in a certain way. And only when we understand the language that my partner is expressing and my partner understands the language that I'm communicating, are we able to necessarily feel love. So there are 5 love languages. There's touch, which is pretty obvious. We hold hands, sex, kissing, that kind of thing, sitting next to each other, cuddling, touch. Men are more likely to be touched. There's gifts, and gifts is not that you buy expensive things, but in this case, gifts could be anything that you interacted and you share with your partner to say, see, I thought about you. It's a thing. It could be a picture. It could be a text that says, I thought about you while we were apart. Time together is simply sitting together on the couch, working, doing your homework together. It doesn't have to be communication, but simply being in the same space. Acts of service, I define this as making your partner's lives easier, bringing them coffee, cooking them dinner, buying groceries, washing their car, anything that just makes their life, doing their laundry, right? And then words of affirmation. And in this case, words of affirmation are not, oh my goodness, honey, you're beautiful, I love you, but do you validate or affirm the other person? Do you validate their ideas, the things that they like? When you say, that's a great idea, or you laugh at their joke, you're affirming them. When you say, man, I can't believe you like that band, that's not words of affirmation. So maybe if I can find that scale, I'll put that one up too. I'm going to wrap this lecture up here. And in the next one, we're going to talk about how you find your partner, mate selection, and a little bit about marriage.